both kind of sitting on my shoulder for the last week because I've been listening to your podcast and I've been reading your book. I read it cover to cover. And everyone in this room, I think you're going to want to read it cover to cover because it tells you a lot about the history of being a woman in America in the last 25 years. And it was so inspiring. You've done so much in your careers. Let us just get a sense of where you are. And then I just want to take the audience through like how you navigate that, how you stay focused, how you kind of, silence a lot of the noise.
Oh my God. The truth is, it's really hard. I think when you like open the internet, and I think the answer that you want to hear or like audiences want to hear is like, there's this really perfect morning routine and I get up at 4:30 and I work out and I meditate and I journal and I do all these things and then my mind is sane and I take these awesome like ashwagandha pills and I like, do all this stuff and I'm like super ready for my day and like life is, it comes, but I can handle it. It's a shit show in my house. Like the only thing I need to do in the morning is get my kids to school on time. Like that is like the main chore of the morning. And the way that I stay sane, honestly, is I think it's just enjoying the chaos. Like life is really full and I choose the things that I want on my plate. There's so much on our plates all the time. And it's the power of saying no. So saying no as much as you can and saying yes to the things that you want on the plate. It's just about enjoying the journey. Like I try to stay active and healthy and I do try to meditate and I do try to journal and I do all those things, but it's not perfect. And it kind of looks like this all day. But I get to do it with the people that I love every day. And I think that's what makes the chaos enjoyable.
I wish I had a simpler answer too. I mean, it's a very similar, I think so much of how we operate in the public sphere is this notion of what you can control and what you can't control. And I think so much of, at least historically, my life in public service, there's so much you can't control. Like you're dealing every day with so much income. The older your kids get, actually, the harder it is because, when I was on a campaign and I was racing out the door and my son would say, "Mommy, when are you leaving and when are you coming back?" And that would tug at my heartstrings. But like 5 minutes after I left, he was like playing with his Legos and totally fine. That gets harder as they get older. Now that he's 11, it's like, "Mom, you've been out 4 days this week. Where are you going now?" And so really trying to balance your time. I think the greatest gift, and I do get up every day and try to have gratitude, even though I am that woman in her 40s who certainly has anxiety about all kinds of things, about the future of the world, what I'm leaving to my child, my financial security, like all the things that, we don't worry about when you're kind of in this fast pace. So, I try to be much more intentional now. I do try and find, I never used to work out, and that was a pandemic thing for me that, forced me to shut down. I was one of those people that was forced to shut down. And now I'm living in this space where I can be much more entrepreneurial about how I want to spend my time. And a lot of that is, I end up speaking a lot of women's conferences and I actually love that. And what I really want to force through is like being in a room and being in a space and experiencing this. It often tends to be women-related issues, or whether it's foreign affairs or whether it's politics. I used to have like a book. I still have this book, and every day I would make a little box and all the things I have to do, and my success for the day was measured by how many of those boxes I checked. And I gave up a few years ago with this notion I'm not going to be able to check all of those boxes. It's just figuring out what that balance is. And the last thing I'll say to Suneera's point, because she's really helped me actually think through this like consciously, is taking that moment to breathe, is taking that 1 second to sort of, whether that is drinking your ginger tea at night or whether that's like reading a book for 30 minutes, that's always been my escape. It's whether just cuddling with my kid and just, getting off the Zoom early. But like that's an intentional thing, and forgiving yourself.
That's
taking
really
time
interesting.
for yourself. Yeah.
One sense I got from listening to the podcast and the book is that you both have incredibly high standards. I think that's fair to say. For both of you, are you happy with the state of the podcast? Are you happy with the book you created?
I think if you would have asked me this last year, the answer would have been no, I'm not. Like there's always like you raise the bar, and then before you even get to that goal, you raise the bar again. Like you're not even at the goal, and then you start climbing, and then you raise the bar again. And that's kind of been the pursuit of my life, and I would say most of any ambitious person. And type A personalities, also type A and a Virgo. The perfectionism is real, and I think most women do struggle with that. And I would say that this last year, so I built everything that I could have possibly built. And when we did the Series D funding, reached the 100 million in revenue, reached the billion in valuation, and we're celebrating, and we had like the biggest celebration day at Stax, and it was like we're a real company, like we really did it, we did the thing, and it was like we didn't go public, but we're a private company, but it was like ringing the bell, like it was that moment, and that celebration, I thought that was everything I ever wanted. So for the last 10 years, I chased and I chased and I chased and I chased, and the bar kept rising and kept rising and kept rising. And I would say like the next morning, the party was over. And then it was back to the next board meeting, and it was, okay, instead of $1 billion, we needed it to be 2, right? And I went away, like that summer was the first time that I took a real vacation with my family, like a real vacation. We were gone for the summer. I took a month away. I was working, but away in Europe, and did the whole, like I've been wanting to do the nomad, even through pandemic, I was like in the office every day. And when I actually got a chance to like get away and really zoom out, and I really started to question, and I felt the emptiest I had ever been in my life post reaching the unicorn. And I thought, and I always thought this is it. Like, this is the chase. This is the crown jewel. But it's like the dog who wants to catch the car. What happens when you actually catch it, right? Like the chase is gone. And I felt so empty. And it was looking back, and it was really reflecting on, what do I want my next chapter really to be? And I think if you would have asked me this a year ago, before I had, before I left the company, my answer might have been different, that it's not good enough, and I'm reaching this, and I want this milestone, and we should be in like the whatever. And I think now, and I'm really, really, really proud, and I'm really happy about all the things that I've gotten a chance, I got to do, I get to do this. And that's a reminder for every woman that is listening, and every ambitious person, right? There's always going to be that next, but it is important to enjoy that journey along the way, because that milestone is gonna move the second that you get there. I came back from that summer, and I went to my chairman, and I said, I don't wanna be CEO anymore. And I know here's the next chapter, and I'm like, this is it. Like there is nothing else that I can be incentivized for to build anymore, because going from 1 to 2 billion is just, even though that's what everyone expects you to do, right? It's not I'm not setting that bar for myself. It's time for me to actually enjoy the journey. And so that's when I made the decision to leave as CEO. And now, I'm a builder, and so I'm excited to build again and build the next platform or do other things. But it's not about the perfection anymore, and it's just truly about, and I say this in a sense of, I'm still a perfectionist, I'm still an overachiever, so I want the best, and excellence does matter. So my definition of it's not necessarily just because I say, you don't need to be. It's not just about the perfection. You can have both. Right? You can have a level of standard. I'm not saying that you should devalue that worth. So you could still have that level of excellence, but it is important to enjoy the journey. So today, my answer to you, Christine, is yes. It is just right the way it is.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, I have to say that I've always lived my life kind of intentionally grateful. And maybe that's being just raised in a house with a father who was ill, very ill. And so I've always approached the world of if you have your health, everything else is kind of fine. Like if you have that. And so every single day I get up and I'm grateful for whatever it is I have. And I say that, I lived this fairy tale life until it sort of all exploded one day in 2011. And even when we were in it, like my husband and I at the time would get him and say, can you believe our life is so amazing? And so I feel like having that ability to recognize in the moment and having gratitude for what you do have. And I remember even when times things were really hard for me, I'd always say, my God, my life is so hard. And my girlfriends, this is, by the way, I think one of the most important lessons I have learned as I have gotten older is the power of female friendship and the power of it, and how it is an effort that you cannot take it for granted. And I think of the many years when I was on a campaign trail and I would text my girlfriend saying, I'm landing at 9, you want to meet for dinner at 9:30? And it was always on my schedule and taking for granted. And it was only when things got hard and I, lost a lot of my girlfriends, I realized you can't take these things for granted. But I would say that my life is so hard and people don't understand. And I remember I had this one girlfriend who told me, she's like, Huma, nobody feels sorry for you. Like, they just don't. You're like, you work for Hillary Clinton, you're like at red carpets and at like fancy events all the time. Nobody feels sorry for you.
Yeah.
And it was one of those like aha moments of your self-reflection versus the perception of one's space in the world. And so the gift that the book was, and I was very intentional in the book, and you've read it, I decided to put warts and all, it is my entire truth is in that book. So the good, the bad, the ugly, the things I have guilt about, the things I have trauma about, it's all in there. And so to share it with the world, I wander around telling women, consider doing the thing that scares you the most. You never know, you might actually be really good at it. I did that.
Oh, interesting.
And that is the thing that scared me the most. And it's been the most, and then I was able to embark on this year of saying yes, like going around and intentionally trying new things, being new things. I mean, when I went on my book tour in November of 2021, every question ended with, so this is great. When are you gonna run for office? Are you gonna run for Senate? It was just this automatic, you need to be a politician because that's just the box that I'm in. And I have very aggressively kind of pushed back against that, saying like, I've created this, writing a book is like having a baby. It's like you've no idea. You're like, you're putting everything into this, you're nurturing this thing that you're creating, and you just put it out in the world. And you have no idea what the experience is gonna be. And for me, the experience has been extraordinary, and it's opened doors to do all kinds of things I never thought I'd be able to do, including sitting here today with you and meeting women like Suneera, who I feel like I'm learning from her as I try to explore this pivot in my life. And it's never too late to pivot in your life professionally as a woman.
One thing I was thinking about when you were speaking for the podcast is the concept of anger. Given the world we live in, how do you process that as a business owner, as someone who's gone through huge ups and downs in a way it's not going to be palatable to our society, but it's also a very healthy thing that you're going through?
I'll let you answer the anger question first.
I, for those of you who know anything about my life, and I did, I was the vice chair of a campaign that employed thousands of people around this country and constantly had to deal with incoming every single day. Yeah. You're making 1,000 decisions a day. One of the very first pieces of advice my mentor gave me at the White House was make a decision. Might not be the right decision, but you got to make a decision. Do not be paralyzed by indecision or fear. That is the only way forward. And then you deal with the consequences if it's wrong. So I carried a lot of anger. I carried anger in my personal life, dealing with my, public life, and just the overwhelming amount of the strategic decisions we're trying to make, the day-to-day decisions that we tried to make. I will be very honest to say that in my early career, in my 20s, I think I took a lot of my anger out on my colleagues, and particularly like if I was just frustrated, it would just be, and what I have done very intentionally now, because as I got into my 30s and 40s, I would compartmentalize things. So I could be very angry about something or some person, often Anthony, for those of you who don't know why that's in the book. But what I would do is I would leave that anger, and then I would come to the office, and the office would be this great, incredible place where I could just explore and push and create amazing things. I was really good at my job, and I knew I was really good at my job. And I do think compartmentalizing that anger was really bad, whether that's professionally or personally, just holding it in, because it manifests itself in other ways.
Yeah, it does.
And so now what I do extremely intentionally is I don't ignore it. I say this to women all the time. You have to experience all of those feelings. I think the challenge is, to the conversation we have generally about society. I mean, we live in a world rather, where the UN Secretary General says it'll take 300 years for there to be gender equity in this world. I mean, still in spaces and places where we're making 70 cents to $1 that a man makes, still knowing that it is hard to have real equity in many ways, and in environments where there is still, not just sexism, but we got ageism. So my girlfriend was saying this to me the other day. She says, as a woman in the workplace, when you're looking to, get a promotion, you're always either too young, so you're inexperienced, you're freezing your eggs, you're trying to get pregnant, so you don't have enough experience to be promoted, or you're too old. And that's because you've got menopause, you've got anger issues, your hot flashes, all that. So, and you're on your way out. So really the right age is when you're a man. And so, I mean, truly. So how do you do these things, and that makes some of us women very angry. So it is, I think, feeling it, processing it, recognizing it. I mean, I don't know anybody who's not in therapy if you live in New York. I do not believe in this sort of traditional kind of Western version of therapy. And I don't know if you come from this, but like in the world of South Asia or the Middle East, you do not talk to strangers about your problems. You just don't. And I think it took me a long time to get through it. And I made it through the other side. And you've read my book, so I went through it to a very, very dark place. And I made it to the other side because I did get professional help in the end because I recognized that I needed it. And that is what I urge. And to the point that you're making, the final point I'll make, then I'll let Suneera answer. But when it comes to social media, we are, and the reason I have warts and all in my book, it's hard to not look at your Instagram feed and not look. I did this last week. It's like I do too much. I'm going to go to less events. And then what do? I go on Instagram and I'm like, wait, everyone is at the Caring Foundation dinner. And it's like, then you have to, figure out like what's okay to say no to and what, and be okay kind of not doing things. And that's hard. But I think the anger piece is a very important. I mean, men get angry all the time, and we're like, "Oh my God, they're geniuses."
Yeah.
They're accepted for their eccentricities, and women do it, and it's different.
I think one of the things that's been helpful for me, I mean, there are definitely, I would say, emotions, right? I do feel that I'm an emotional being, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay to be emotional, and I've been lucky that I've had some really great people I've got great tools, and I think having the right tools in anger is important, and it's okay to have those emotions. I actually don't think it's nice that women are asked if they're angry, right? Like I can be emotional about something, and that doesn't mean I'm angry. I can have an opinion, does not mean that I'm angry. I can have, I can just have an opinion and not be angry. And so I do think that we have to also change the way that we view women and emotions. We all have emotions, and it's okay to have emotions, just like we do with our children. We tell them all emotions is good for boys and for girls to express their emotions. And so I think I've been fortunate enough that one of the things that was always instilled in me is like, there's one thing to be angry and just to be angry for the sake of being angry. I think it's important that if you are angry, to use that anger for purpose, right? Like, what are you doing to solve the problem? Mm-hmm. And so I don't value people, and I think this is where, where the internet and social media, you could sit behind a screen and be angry all day long and cancel people and say this is and just behind a screen to say, let's be angry, let's be angry, let's be angry. But what are you actually doing to create a solution to the problem? When there is something that is triggering or makes me want to have an opinion or gets me emotional, I do think it's important to really think about what we can do to go change that behavior. And I think that my entire career, there were many moments that I've been in boardrooms, in meetings, and it's emotional. It's an emotional process running a business. And I would say that the things that have gotten me through it is by just being able to have the tools, having the right mentors, therapists, coaches. And for me, it was a business coach. For me, it was also having co-founders that I could go and vent to. And I think that's where friendship and mentorship is also important, because it's important not to make decisions out of anger, right? You don't quit on a bad day. You quit on a good day. You have to process all of the things to then make a good decision. And I think we all go through that emotional cycle, but it's important to be able to have the tools and to use our anger for good. And I think that's what most women end up doing. But I don't think it's fair positioning for women, to say like we're not angry. Yeah. Right? We're not angry. We have an opinion, and there's been a lot of it's not our world. And I think the points that you make, and it's also important for us to take accountability. What Huma said on that, we want equality, but also we're looking at the guy's paycheck too. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's important for us to also, have that standardization of equality and how we're doing, what we're doing for our parts as well. And so I think that that's important.
Wonderful. Huma, Suneera, it has been such a delight to have you here at Inc., and we are so glad that you joined us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.